Hi everyone. Here we're going to go over several functions of R and steps to do lab 2. Let's note that I have R Studio here. Uh, on the left, top left, we have the file or the source file, which may have the R code that we use to run. On the bottom left, we have the console, which we can type our commands directly to be run. On the top right, we have our environment, which this is useful that it lists the variables that we have in the data sets that we're using. And there's all the information here about history of the steps taken. And on the bottom right, we have also several tabs, files, and usually we're going to have the plot and other information, useful information here as well, packages that we may use. So there's a lot going on, but we'll take a little step at a time. And I'm going to be adding the commands over here on the file, and I got to here by going to File. You can go to New File and R script. And let's see, I have here untitled one. Let's go ahead and make sure we save that file even before we begin. I'm not sure if you can see that screen now, but I'm going to save this as lab 2 tutorial. And we're going to save. I don't need to put the file extension. The program will automatically put the file extension. Note that I'm avoiding spaces by using underscore. This is a standard in computer programming. We do that to avoid problems, but generally computer programs have become smarter and can do well with names, file names with space, but usually good practice to avoid spaces in various cases. So I already have my code here, and I'm going to be putting it on this file. And first, I'm just going to put a number of comments. I can hear about the data set we're using. We're going to use this chronic obstructive pulmonary disease data set of patients in a hospital. So it is a data set of patient data with health information of various variables. And there's some basic variables of interest that we're going to use. One is named FEV, which is the amount of air a person can exhale in 1 second. It's forced expiratory volume. MWT1, best measure of walking. It's a measure of walking distance. So there are a few of them. There's a measure of how much a person can walk in a specific time frame. There's a variable for smoking, and it's not 0 and 1. It's 1 and 2, 1 for non-smoker and 2 for smoker. And gender, 0 for female and 1 for male. They're the values, and there are other variables too that we may use. For example, age, but that's just the actual number of years of age, so that's straightforward. And what we're going to do is we're going to begin with part 1. Notice that the hashtag in the front or the pound symbol is just comments. So if we run this, nothing's going to happen because this is for humans, not for the computer to run. And the way we can run is in different ways, but since we're typing in the file here, we can select what we want to run and press run. And what happens if we do that with comments? Well, if we do that with comments, they appear in the console, but because they're just comments, so there's no real command. But let's start some commands here. And the first one that I like to do is to check the working directory. So check your working directory. The command is get wd, and so you can highlight and then run, and then it comes up in the console here, the command as well as the result. So home /v, that's where I am. And you can also write it on the console itself here. And notice that once you start typing, other options start appearing. Functions, the functions, existing functions already come up for you, or the variables and so on. When we have a parenthesis, that means it's a function, and often input can go into the function. But in this one, we don't really need an input. And so we can type it from the console itself or from over here. I like to type it over here because here we can save it as a file. And you can, as you add, you can save, and then you have all your code there saved for later. So next, after we checked our directory, we want to our current working directory, we want to bring in the file of interest. So I know my my dataset file is in a subfolder of this home v directory. So I need to add that folder there, and then the file name. We're going to use the read.csv function, and then we just add the file name in the function. Now this function here, read.csv, has other parameters. So well, they're not kind of coming up here, but there's other parameters for you to identify maybe the encoding of the file and so on, but it should work now with the standard default parameters. And what happens is this read.csv function is going to grab this file, and then it's going to load it into this variable here that we call COPD. So this term, I just named it COPD. You can call it CO or COPD data frame. This kind of too many words. You're going to need to be typing it. So keep it short and brief. You highlight just the code. We don't need to highlight the comments. Highlight the code, run, and then you see that it runs. Usually there's no output, but if you see that the cursor kind of moved on to a new blinking cursor, then that means that the function worked. And for you to test, well, there's several ways to test. One is to see the file, and I'm going to write head.copd right here in the console, and then that prints out the first 5 or 6 rows, 6 rows in this case here, with all the variables. So you can see that it's a standard table format for a data frame, rows of records and columns of variables. And we could also have put over here to see the head or the top rows and so on. Now here I'm going to show you some standard R commands to see the part of the data. So for example, if you want to show just the 4th row of the data. Now this may be useful when your data is sorted in a specific way, or you identify a particular row, and you can see this is to show the 4th row of the data. When we use the brackets like this of a data frame variable, the first item on the left is for rows, and the item on the right of the comment is for columns. So if we run that, you see here, this is the row, the record with all of the variables of that particular record. And if we want to see the 5th column, it would be something like this. Okay, so this is the 5th column. So all the rows are instances of the columns. If you want to see the 2nd row and 3rd column, it would be something like this. So this is a specific cell, specific value. 2nd row, 3rd column, 79. What's the 3rd column? Well, ID X, ID age. So this is probably age. The 3rd row has age 79. If you want to see the total rows, it's dim, dimension. So total rows and columns, 101 rows and 24 columns. So 24 variables, 101 records in this data set. Another way to look at the data is to actually use the column name. So if you want to see all the rows for the gender column, run, you see here. Often this might not be very useful, but sometimes it is useful. If you want to, just see the first row for gender. Run. Well, the first row for gender is 1, and 1 is going to be male. To see the first 5 rows, we would use the colon symbol. So 1 through 5 before the comma, which is the rows, would be something like that. Okay. And I'm just highlighting each area because otherwise it would run, everything would run, all the statements in this file. So I'm going to stop here for now, and then next we'll continue on descriptive summaries of the data frame.